Hello everyone, with the phone ringing in the background and the dog down below, this is Mr. 13 Things coming at you with Geometer Sketchpad review for me, if not for you. I am running this in Geometer Sketchpad 5, trying to recompile things that I had gone through a year or two ago when I struggled with the difference between 4 and 5. But also in the context of how important it is to learn the way software with good or bad design works through something called geometric constraints and parametric equation or parameterizing design, which you will see in Autodesk Inventor and you will see also in SolidWorks, which is where I've been struggling over the last month or so. So let's see how I do. First off, the interface is odd, but one of the themes you want to get here is the concept of parent and child, and that's a pretty large concept in design. But when we think about shapes, very often it's going to make more sense in a math class percent to tie them to a known coordinate system. So what I tend to want to do very often is to start is I want to show the grid, right? And then when you see that, it's odd to think that there is necessarily no scale to that, but you need to go through and then go through this concept, probably going to do this wrong, of dragging that point, right? As you drag this bigger and smaller, so this idea of how big is that becomes an important bit. So when you do the graph and mark coordinate system, so this define origin, right? You already have a coordinate system. No, I don't want to change that. And now we have this, and I'm going to go ahead and now draw 2 points or a line. I'm going to draw a line segment from that point to that point. And now the question is what is the length of that line? It appears that it has a coordinate system, right? So we already have something scale. So if I go here, I right click, and I look at the properties, it shows me those properties. The property that is that it has parents, right? Those are the two parents that it has. And notice one's an origin point and one's a unit point. So this basically goes through with how when you lay these things out, defining the scale to this, right, which is kind of an important thing, may whack you out. So I don't know that I'm going to fix this here, but I'm going to go ahead now and measure. As I grab the thing first, you learn to grab first, like in a lot of software, measure and the length, and you see that it has centimeters. So this actually has scale. But as I grab this and pull it, right, this is kind of odd, but it's changing, right, the length of it. And so it's tough to do this. I don't know how you can say it, but you like that. Now your grid here is based on 1 centimeter equals an inch now, or 1 centimeter is in the grid. So that's kind of an odd concept, but that fact of when you go ahead and draft something, you now have these two things here. I'm going to learn to right click and do things later on like hide or erase, and so I'll now kind of proceed through. But this concept of what you do realistically, geometrically, things, when you think through them, they don't have to be at scale. But for you and for the software, sometimes it might help to have some things at scale. Important thing to know here now is that the X scale and the Y scale is the same. And you can see that when you draw a circle. So the next thing you want to do is, we'll just go ahead and draw one of the most basic shapes in here. You're going to see is a circle, but the problem becomes as you draw a circle, it's going to have a parent-child. So when you draw a circle from there, which is the origin point, and drag it out, let's say to around there, now if you ever want to move that circle, right, that circle is attached to the origin, so you don't want to draw that first circle. I'm going to go edit, undo, edit, undo, construct circle. You don't want to draw your circle off the center, which is problematic. Now, can you go through and go right click and you can hide it? Can you erase it? I don't know. But instead, you might want to go ahead and draw a circle, let's say, as it tries to grab that and pull it. Now that circle, you'll see, is defined by a point and a center point and a point that's out there. So it turns out that this point there, I'm going to go edit, Undo construct circle. So I'm going to grab this, right? Again, it's about parent-child. As I grab that and start moving it, right, you notice that it's moving that, but it's locked that in place. However, if I grab that and hold the shift key and grab that and now start moving it around, they move somewhat, though not perfectly in unison, so I don't really know what that's doing. So this concept of parent and child is going to be a big deal. But that said, the concept of going to something, right click, and looking what it says, select parent, select the properties, looking at the properties. So the properties of this, it is a point on the y-axis. So knowing what is the parent of that. So I'm going to go back here and click and shift. I'm holding things now, right click, and what it doesn't allow you to do is delete, but edit cut usually will work. So we're going to get rid of both of those. Right, it only actually, even though you highlighted two, it got rid of one. So you can't multiple select and perform all the time. Now instead, I'm going to put a point here, arbitrary, and I'm going to now put another point that's arbitrary. And now when I do the circle, from there to there, it'll be of interest what is the parent and child. So let's go back through the points. Right click, properties. So this has no parent, so it's an independent object. I would tend to differ with that it really is some way attached to the coordinate system, but leave that as it has. It has a children that's a circle, so that parent-child relationship becomes really, really key, and it's actually a programming thing, which is why you do Scratch when you're like in 2nd grade or in 6th grade. But that said, that point there, what is its parent? It's also an independent object. That's interesting. That point's an independent object. Now let's finally go here and click on the circle and look at its parents. Oh, it has two parents, 0.8 and 0.7. And so you start to have this concept of what feeds whatever else. This is where I think many people then struggle when you try to animate something. You need to know its parent and child. So if I go right here, right click, and I say animate point, that point was free, so it's free to walk around. So instead of undo animate point, if I want to run around a point around a circle, the point has to be, I'm going to take and grab it here, that point has to be the child of something. So if I take that and right click, and now look at the properties, that is a child of the circle. So when I take that and right click and I say animate point, it's going to go around the circle. So there, what you're looking at is something called parametric design. So this concept of using the property to discuss what is parent and child is going to be the theme of a lot of what you're going to want to do when you get into animation. And the interface may or may not be the same in Geometer Sketchpad 4, but what we've done so far is we've kind of figured out in some way, shape, or form to get your coordinate system working. Really important thing, and particularly in physics and mathematics. The crux of this is you don't need to apply scale to anything, but it's going to help your brain a little bit, and the computations perhaps to do that within the software. The beauty of geometry is that all circles are the same circle, scaled up or down, and then placed in space. Ellipses are scaled circles, it's just that they're scaled in different directions. And so there's a lot that you're trying to get from geometry that's important for other things, but that doesn't always come across when you're struggling with software. But let's face it, this is a lot less complex than Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and now I'm going to go ahead and draw another point. Right, when I put a point out here, again, that point is going to be an independent child. In other words, it's going to have right-click properties. Learning to right-click properties, that's pretty good. And the fact that it has no parents is a good thing to do. Now when I draw a line, and I'll end this video here in a second, a line segment is kind of key from here to there. And when I look at right-click properties. That line segment has 2 points, and then point 9 and point 10. It's a good idea at some point to label those. One is going to be independent, one is a child. So when I go now through here and go right click and animate point, that line is now animated. And the reason why that can be somewhat important, you're going to see in a second. I'm going to stop that. If I take this and then I say measure, right? So measure the slope, right? And what you'll see here, the length, I can measure the length as it's a line segment. And now as I take this and again animate the point, and I'm going to go, the fact that you just can't, I guess you can't generally right click, that's probably not going to be the case in Geometer Sketchpad 4, but it'll probably be up here someplace there. We're going to animate the point. And you notice that stuff go along. Last thing I'm going to do and end this is we have a line segment. However, really when you're doing geometric instructions, you really want to be pure and understand that line segments are not lines. And so if I go ahead and draw a line here, if it's going to be the child, we're going to see how that, from there to there, not a ray. Now let's see what the child is of that. That line clicked out here, right click, the properties, its parents are actually not the line segment but the 2 points. So understanding where that comes, but the difference is if I go right click here and I want to go with the equation because it is a line, not a line segment. Key deal within the software. Realistically, later on, you'll see that line segments can be parameterized. So we'll talk about that at some point, or maybe when you're doing Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty or anything else that's coming out on the PS4. That concept of parameterization in time is essentially what you're doing here. But as I go through here, you're going to see, take that point now and animate it, and you're going to see what happens to that. Now this may or may not, if you notice, if you zoom out, and that becomes really one of the major problems, I think, is the viewing with this, that you're dealing with software where you're on an infinite canvas, and actually this is an infinite canvas, but learning how to zoom out, right, on this because of the scale thing here becomes problematic. And so that's one of the things I will be delving into as I play this out. So key things on this is understanding parent and child, understand locking down a coordinate system, and then finally understanding that you can, hopefully in your software, you can click on something and get a right click and change the context menu. So in this case, I can go ahead here and right click and I can hide the line, right? But that doesn't hide the equation. So as I go through here, you get, we'll go ahead and start again, back to that point. When I go here, right, even though it looks like it's giving me the equation of a line segment, realistically it's giving me the equation of a line, y equals mx plus b, but later on you're going to see, and I'm going to add one final thing here, I'm going to draft a, sure I'll do a line segment, pair, and holding the shift key very often doesn't work, but let's see, control on my keyboard. I think shift key should hold a reference direction. So you have orthogonal directions of X, Y, and then Z. Very often the shift key on software, and now my software is working better. So it's shifting this. So I've got there, and when I'm going to finally now do the last one, which is a weird marker tool, I'm going to go ahead and somehow take this and measure from there to there, and it measured an angle. And now I'm going to take that angle, I'm clicking here. What's weird when you can't zoom in, so I'm going to grab that, right click, and it's not finding it yet. So I'm going to go ahead, try again. This is the odd one. How do you, there it is. So I'm going to take this, what I'm trying to do is right click and have it measure that angle. I'm not going to do that. What you also finally realize is this is y equals mx plus b, or y equals the tangent of the angle that the line makes with the x-axis, or the direction tangent, plus b. So in this case, we'll finally end this at 15 minutes. Want to edit it down, that's going to be your job. and we'll see whether anyone does anything with it. Thanks for listening.